Reaction video time. This is CNBC, how Major League Soccer plans to overtake baseball. Now, I have not seen this. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what the plan is. I can't necessarily say that I'm a fan of trying to overtake anything or any other sport. I believe this is the United States casts a big wide net over everything, and everybody is, if you're a baseball fan, you should be able to watch as much baseball as you want. If you're a soccer fan, same thing. If you're both, then you should be able to like both and not worry about it. I don't know if one needs to overtake the other or so forth. But let's see what they say.
Soccer in the U.S. It hasn't always had the best track record. Its popularity wavers and interest is usually tied to major events such as the World Cup or the Olympics.
Or actually the national team, you can put that on there as well.
Major League Soccer has spent over 25 years trying to change soccer sentiment in the U.S., while competing with more fast-paced, high-scoring sports like the NFL and NBA.
You could debate whether the NBA maybe not so much in the fast pace, but football is not really fast-paced in my opinion. It's a stop and go. But there is a more scoring in football and in basketball than there is in soccer. I mean, that's one of the things you say about soccer, is that it's one of its greatest strengths is that there's not a lot of goals, a lot of scoring, which makes when it does happen so much more special. But that's also one of its downsides, that there isn't a lot of scoring, and you do get 0-0 score lines. You don't get a lot of 3-2s, 4-3s, because 3-2 is considered a high-scoring game in soccer.
You could just tell that the players are better, the speed of the game. Not being the biggest soccer fan, you could just look at it. It's night and day. MLS, it looks like it's more minor league. It looks like it's growing. But listen, they have the signages all over the place. Very innovative league the MLS is, but they got to improve that competition.
Over the last 10 years,
I kind of disagree a little bit with that, because a competition as far as MLS concerned is between the teams is very good. But if you compare MLS to English Premier League, or Serie A, or Eredivisie, or even the Belgian Jupiler League, they've been doing that for over 100 years. MLS is only 25, 26 years old.
The MLS has become increasingly popular. The league garnered the attention of top talent across the world, brought in significant investments in celebrity ownership, and generated a massive presence on social media.
We think the internet, puts us in a position where we can talk to this enormous fan base around the world. And what we've done over the past 10 to 12 years is really increase the investment in making the U.S. and MLS one of the top leagues in the world.
MLS tried to not become the NASL Part 2. The North American Soccer League, which was big in the 70s for a very, very brief moment of time and then folded around the mid-80s. They don't want to be like that. They wanted to grow and they wanted to expand. They wanted to sustain itself. And I think they're doing a good job so far.
But the MLS's rise in popularity has seen its fair share of obstacles, financial woes, leadership changes and shakeups, and its continuous fight to draw in a TV audience. Following its 2021 season, things may be shifting in the MLS's favor, with new expansion teams rising.
Keep in mind the first 10 teams of the MLS were in the East. It was New England Revolution, DC United, Tampa Bay Mutiny, Columbus Crew, and I'm thinking of one. It wasn't Chicago. They came later. New England, DC, Tampa Bay Mutiny, Columbus, and New York, New Jersey Metro Stars. And the West, it was Kansas City Wiz, Colorado Rapids, San Jose Clash, LA Galaxy, and Dallas Burn. If you look at the MLS now, some of those, like Tampa Bay Mutiny, is no longer there. But as it's grown, it's kind of gotten a little bit better. It's gotten more international with Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal.
Rising popularity and a new media deal that can bring millions of fans and billions in revenue.
This is the largest sport in the world, and the U.S. is the largest sports economy in the world. And so there is something really special in the making here. And it just requires steady investment, but you think about the ownership group in MLS and the amount of capital that's been invested, it's never going back. It's only going forward.
Before the MLS became, well, the MLS, there was the North American Soccer League, which ran from 1968 to 1984, and it was considered the blueprint for what the MLS should and shouldn't do.
There was a couple things that the NASL did that wasn't that really. They had a 35-yard line for offsides. So instead of in the real regular game that we see nowadays, you're offsides when you are past the only way you can be offsides is if you're on your opponent's side of the field. So you cross the half line, you're offside. They added a 35-yard line so that you could actually be across the half line. You were only offside past that 35-yard line. They also had overtime and shootouts and that sort of thing, which is not really part of the game.
North American Soccer League was a free-spending, decentralized league, meaning teams spent excessive money on star players like Pelé to draw in fans. The league never generated meaningful revenues or substantial growth that it needed. By 1984, financial tolls from overspending cost the league
Giorgio Canaglia
almost all of its clubs as they began shuttering their franchises. In 1985, the North American Soccer League officially suspended operations. This is Jim Curtin. He's the head coach of the Philadelphia Union and has been with the MLS from the very beginning.
And he played for the Chicago Fire. I remember watching him play in Soldier Field against my beloved Columbus Crew.
There was a time in the 70s and 80s that 75,000 people were coming out to watch soccer games. The New York Cosmos as the kind of example of that. But what did happen is it was kind of a reckless spending. It was maybe too much too soon. There weren't the soccer-specific stadiums.
There's a great documentary, I believe Matt Dillon narrates it, called Once in a Lifetime. It's about the New York Cosmos.
That there are now, and it was kind of like a traveling circus almost, and it was a little bit out of control, and without a real kind of vision and longer-term plan. I think the lessons learned were they got a little too big for themselves too quickly, and all of a sudden now the money dries up.
By 1993, the new MLS League was announced. With a centralized structure that controlled costs similar to the NFL, clubs were split into divisions and run by investor-operators or owners. 10 clubs were created for the initial debut in
Yeah, there we are. DC United, New York, New Jersey Metro Stars, San Jose Clash, Dallas Burn, Columbus Crew, Kansas City Wiz, New England Revolution, Tampa Bay Mutiny, Colorado Rapids, and the Los Angeles Galaxy. Now, if these teams, DC United, Los Angeles Galaxy, Colorado Rapids, New England Revolution, and Columbus Crew still have their original names. Kansas City Wiz is because it's now Sporting KC. Dallas, FC Dallas, I think is what they're called now. San Jose Clash. I believe the original moved down to Houston, and then they became the San Jose Earthquakes.
1996, with 2 more clubs added just 2 years later.
And Chicago Fire would win the MLS Cup their very first year.
If I think back to when I first started in Major League Soccer in 2001 as a rookie, we were playing games in high school football stadiums in Dallas. We were playing in Division III colleges in Naperville. Early on, we were down to 10 teams. There was real discussions in my rookie year in the offseason.
Tampa Bay Mutiny folded, and so did the Miami Fusion.
And that the league might not make it. At the time, Phil Anschutz was in charge of and owned 7 of the teams, of the 10. So it was on life support. And Don Garber came in and injected this life into a league that...
Don Garber's done a heck of a job with with MLS, turning it into what it's become. I believe he was in charge of NFL Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. And took over the MLS and still the commissioner to this day, and has done a great job.
That was quite literally in trouble.
The league was met with strong pushback during its early years. Traditional soccer fans were opposed to some of the rule changes and scoffed at the MLS's attempt.
One of the things that MLS, anybody who was a fan of MLS when it started, was the game was over, they'd have the shootouts from the NASL. They also had a 10-minute overtime period. Later on, they scrapped all that and just played regular football, regular soccer game, 90 minutes, game's over. If it's tied, you live with it.
To Americanize the sport. Then in 2002, it had to fold 2 teams, the Miami Fusion and Tampa Bay Mutiny.
And what happened after that, and what was probably one of the most important things, was the building of the soccer-specific stadiums, a real brick-and-mortar building that are...
In 1999, Columbus Crew became the first team to ever have a soccer-specific stadium, and then LA Galaxy were the second team.
Our supporters and fan bases could call their own. They weren't, old college football stadiums or old NFL stadiums. They were soccer specific, and now I think we're up to 27 of these state-of-the-art, beautiful, facilities that.
Not only was Columbus the first one to ever have a soccer-specific stadium, they're the first one to move out of their first soccer-specific stadium into a brand new soccer-specific stadium
that can house 30,000 people, and in some cases down in Atlanta 50,000 people at a game. So that's something that we really was important, and it was a real turning point.
By 2007, things began to trend upward for the MLS with the establishment of the designated players rule.
Or the David Beckham rule. When David Beckham came into the MLS, whether you like him or you don't like him, he definitely changed a lot for the MLS. It really got us on the map, got MLS on the map.
This rule allowed teams to sign star players from abroad. Most famously, the signing of David Beckham to the LA Galaxy with a deal that was worth $250 million.
That rule certainly has paved the way, and is
David Beckham coming from Real Madrid to MLS and not yet ready to retire was big for this league. Again, David Beckham is not the greatest football player, greatest soccer player that ever lived. I think even he would say that. But David Beckham was a name, and he was a brand, and he was a very, very popular brand, known worldwide. And if you put David Beckham in your league, you're going to get noticed.
It's been a smart initiative in that we grew the league in a smart way. It wasn't that you could have 10 David Beckhams on your team, where previously in the former NASL they maybe expanded too quickly. With the way they strategically went about the designated player rule / David Beckham rule, was calculated, and it didn't put all your eggs in one basket. So I think that was a really intelligent move that put our league on the global level, because David was an icon on and off the field.
Early 2000s was really R&D. It's to figure out how do we attack this, and I think the soccer-specific stadiums, the designated player, all part of that R&D process to figure out how do you build a league unique to our country, the playoff systems.
It also didn't hurt that the U.S. national team made it to the quarterfinals of the 2002 World Cup.
The different formats. When I got involved in sort of 07, 08, I thought the next 10 to 15 years would be the investment phase, where we grow from 15 teams to 30 plus, 30 teams, cover the map much more completely like other major sports.
The MLS is focused on expanding its clubs to massive sports markets and increasing popularity with younger generations. For over 25 years, the MLS has grown into a massive operation. Clubs now span from coast to coast, with Austin FC debuting in 2021 and new clubs in 2022 and 2023 for the Charlotte Football Club and St. Louis City, respectively.
You see,
Charlotte has already debuted. This must be a couple years old, this video, because Austin's debuted, played their season, Charlotte's played their first season, waiting for St. Louis to play their first season.
The breakthrough city by city, but the critical mass of the league really won't be apparent until we reach that sort of 30-team milestone. And sport is something that you enjoy together as a community, as a family, as intergenerationally. So we're still building the storylines, we're still building the rivalries, we're still building the traditions, and that's something that takes time. It will happen organically. It's not something we can unnaturally force.
The clubs are becoming more valuable than ever. In 2008, the average valuation of MLS teams was about $37 million. Today, clubs are valued at $550 million, higher than some teams in the Premier League. Currently, the Los Angeles Football Club is the highest valued MLS team at $860 million.
Magic Johnson is one of the minority shareholders on the owners of that team. Or one of the many owners. I think there's a lot of minority owners on that team. I want to say minority, I don't mean in terms of ethnic. I'm talking about there's a whole group of investors who are owners on LAFC. They play at the Bank of California Stadium out in Los Angeles. I've been there. I saw El Tráfico 2-2 out there. I think it was 2018, 2019, whatever it was. But heck of a stadium they have out there in LAFC. In fact, it's right next door to the Los Angeles Coliseum.
It's almost alarming to see some of the valuations of the teams in Major League Soccer, because you think of some of the old English teams that have 100 plus years of history, or teams in different parts of Europe that have been around forever. But what you see now with our league is these brand new stadiums, these young, exciting ownership groups that are coming in, the advertising dollars that come in, the amazing facilities, and they're really jumping in value at a really quick rate. Sometimes it's shocking for people to see that, as an example, LAFC is valued at higher than even a club like Newcastle, who just had basically trillionaires come in and buy it. So it's incredible to see the growth of this league.
In 2018, Gallup issued a report that tied soccer and basketball for second in popularity for sports to watch among 18 and 34-year-olds, overtaking baseball.
When I walk my kids to school in Center City, Philadelphia, and drop them off, 10 years ago, I used to only see NFL, NBA, maybe a Major League Baseball, a couple hockey Flyers jerseys. When I walk my kids to school now, it's not just Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm seeing Philadelphia Union jerseys, but then I'm also seeing now rivals of the Philadelphia Union. I'm seeing New York City FC jerseys. I'm seeing a Zlatan Ibrahimovic from the LA Galaxy jersey. I'm seeing a throwback, David Villa from New York City FC. And you're kind of going, this is different.
And a study done in 2020 by Morning Consult found that soccer is the most popular sport among Generation Alpha. And the Los Angeles Football Club owner Larry Berg believes that the MLS could overtake Major League Baseball as America's number 3 sport in 10 years' time.
I don't know that I really care one way, whether or not it overtakes MLB, Major League Baseball, as the number 3 sport in 10 years, or what. I mean, that's not important. The only thing that's important is that the sport grows and it gets better and it gets more enjoyable. And that we're looking back in 1996 as the year it all started, when MLS became it was a starting point for a great league that's still going. Not only till 2022 when I'm doing this, but beyond 2022. Whether it overtakes baseball, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
MLS still has to improve their product. They got to go out and get better players, right? And so,
no, they really don't. They need to develop their players. Look, MLS is going to be a developmental league for the foreseeable future until MLS can pay all their players. Look, if you look at the Premier League, not every team in the Premier League has astronomical players. Norwich, Watford, they're getting relegated, and it's either between Burnley, Leeds, or Everton. That'll be that third team going down. They need to get better at development. Development is the key, not buying better players.
If that soccer popularity continues to rise with Generation Z and then Generation Y, that's going to help the MLS, right? Generation Alpha, Generation Z, Generation Alpha. If that soccer continues to, that trajectory, that's only going to help the MLS. Again, how big, we don't know, because right now that popularity seems to be from the international standpoint. They like Premier League. They like to see the big stars. That competition is complete. Look,
growing up, when I did during the 70s, 80s, we didn't have cable for the longest time, not by choice, but because it wasn't offered. And by the time it was offered, they weren't showing a whole lot of NASL games. You didn't get to see a whole lot of NASL games for me when I was growing up. In fact, you didn't get to see a lot of English Division One. The Premier League was in the 90s, but they Division One, the top flight for England, you wouldn't see any of those games. You wouldn't see England. You would see Italy. You wouldn't see Germany. The best thing you would have was PBS would have a Soccer Made in Germany with Toby Charles, and you'd see maybe 2 30-minute halves condensed, and that's just how it was. You just couldn't watch any football. In fact, I remember the 1986 World Cup. We had to go to my dad's secretary lived out of town, and she could let us go over there to watch the games, which was awful nice of her. But it's not till recently that you've been able to have access to all the games you could possibly want.
completely different from MLS.
But before the MLS can attempt to overtake the MLB anytime soon, the league still needs to dominate in one crucial area: TV viewership. While the MLS's rapid growth,
as far as TV viewership is concerned, that's also changed as well. Now everything is done through. Most people watch games through streaming. I do watch a lot of games through streaming, but the other thing about TV viewership is also you really don't get a whole lot of people follow. On the sports newscast, they don't follow it a whole lot. At least not that I'm aware of. Look, in February, March, April, May, when NFL is way out of season, what are we talking about in America? The NFL. You go to ESPN, they're talking about the draft 3 months before it even takes place. And when the draft does come, it basically dominates the entire sports landscape. As far as most people are concerned, look, football's not going anywhere, or NFL is not going anywhere in terms of popularity. And I know he's not talking about overtaking the NFL. But, I don't think you should worry about, like I said, overtaking Major League Baseball or anything like that. Get your viewership up, develop, and just because this takes time, this takes process to build a great league, and we're finally doing it the right way.
Has been able to overcome financial issues, fan pushback, and leadership shakeups, the one thing that has been slow to grow over the years is its television footprint. Media rights are a massive cornerstone to how a league functions, and operational revenue. Just take the NFL, for example. In 2020, the league made an estimated $9.89 billion from its media deal, which is evenly distributed amongst all 32 teams. This gives teams like the Green Bay Packers something called national revenue of $309 million for 2020. For the 2019-2020 fiscal year, during the pandemic, this national revenue helped teams stay afloat as most stadiums remained closed and teams were unable to generate local revenue, or revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, or stadium rentals. For the Packers' 2019-2020 fiscal year, they were only able to generate $62 million in local revenue, compared to its 2018-2019 fiscal year, where it generated $211 million in local revenue. The MLS is a localized sport.
Basically, I think you can figure out what that means, but if you don't, it's a lot of the money that the teams make comes from ticket sales, concession stands, parking, and that sort of thing. But if you're not getting that, if the stadiums are empty, you're not getting that revenue.
Meaning a massive amount of the team's revenue is generated from ticket sales, merchandise, and player contracts it sells to other leagues around the world.
Media rights. I keep harping on that, but that's the foundation right now of all the leagues, the media.
Where MLS needs to do better is international media rights. So their league is shown all the way around the world, like the English Premier League, like Serie A, like the Eredivisie, even the Scottish Premier League you can watch in the United States to some extent. Bundesliga, La Liga, Ligue 1, the Turkish League, the Russian League, the J League, the A League, international rights. That brings a lot of money. Also brings a lot of also brings a lot of revenue in marketing.
Rights, because in this age
and merchandise
of content, MLS is going to need that money to grow. Now, they're going to need a network that's really going to invest in them, be able to tell their story, be able to introduce fans to their stars of the sport, being able to market their sport better so that people can gravitate. Because right now, a lot of people do not watch MLS from a national level. It's more of a localized market, right? This is why your Austins and your Charlottes, hopefully those two markets continue to rise, and that's going to help, MLS grow. But they need a national audience.
The MLS is looking to establish a new media rights deal in 2022. The MLS's current 8-year media deal with ESPN, Fox, and Univision has generated an estimated $90 million per year since 2015. The league hopes that it can capitalize on the success from its younger fan base, social media presence, and the FIFA World Cup that's being hosted in the U.S. in 2026.
I think
that's going to be huge, the World Cup in 2026. It's going to be the biggest World Cup ever. Right now, the World Cup is 32 teams, which is going to be in Qatar later this year. But the 2026 World Cup is going to have 48 teams. It's going to be hosted by 3 countries, Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And they're counting on the United. Look, the last time the World Cup was held in 1994 in the U.S., it was massive. You had huge viewership. huge crowds at stadiums. It was an amazing, amazing tournament.
The way we're going to broadcast to our fan base, you'll see another leap sometime between now and 2026 in the way fans can participate and consume the quality of play, and they'll see that it is comparable to some of the best leagues.
If we continue to do the work that we're doing with the unique fan bases that we have, with the great ownership that we have, with the product on the field that's continuing to improve, as the TV production gets better and better, I think that the sky's the limit for Major League Soccer.
I agree. I think MLS is heading in the right direction. They're doing the right things. They still have a ways to go. We know that. But this is how Major League Soccer plans to overtake baseball. I don't look at it like that. I don't look at it like between baseball and soccer like it's a competition between both. Okay, there's nothing to stop a baseball fan from liking soccer. Nothing to stop a soccer fan from liking baseball. The more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. I know there's a lot of baseball players who like soccer. I know there's a lot of soccer players who like baseball. And like I said, the more the merrier. This was fun. This was interesting. Please click a like and subscribe. And for me, I appreciate that. And leave me your comments below. Thank you very much.